The morning air was sharp and cold when the training camp slowly came alive. The ground was still wet from a night rain, and the sound of boots hitting the dirt echoed across the wide field. Rows of soldiers stood in silence, their faces serious, their bodies tired but ready. This place was not for comfort. It was for discipline, endurance, and proving that you could handle pressure without breaking. Among the trainees stood a young female soldier. She wasn't the loudest in the group. She didn't try to impress anyone with big words or bold gestures. She kept her head down, followed orders, and trained harder than most people noticed. While others talked about their strength and achievements, she focused on improving herself every single day. Her journey to this camp had not been easy. She had grown up hearing that certain paths were not meant for people like her. Some said she was too calm, too quiet, too soft. Others believed that she would never survive in a place built on toughness. But she never argued with them. She never tried to prove them wrong with words. She believed that real answers came through actions, not arguments. That morning felt different. There was tension in the air that everyone could feel, but no one could explain. The instructors were moving faster than usual. Senior officers were present on the field, watching every movement closely. Whispers spread quietly among the trainees. Someone important was coming. Soon, a tall commander walked onto the training ground. His presence was impossible to ignore. His posture was firm, his steps confident, and his voice carried authority even before he spoke. Many trainees straightened their backs immediately, as if their bodies reacted before their minds did. People knew his reputation. He had served in elite units and had years of experience in harsh environments. Some admired him deeply. Others feared his harsh attitude. He was known for testing people in unexpected ways, sometimes crossing the line between discipline and pride. He walked slowly along the rows of trainees, his eyes scanning their faces. When he spoke, his voice was calm but sharp. "So this is a new batch," he said. "Let's see who really belongs here." The instructors nodded respectfully, but their expressions were careful. They knew that moments like this could change everything for a trainee. The commander asked for a short demonstration. 2 soldiers were called forward to show basic combat techniques. The demonstration went smoothly. The commander watched quietly, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Then, suddenly, his gaze stopped on a young female soldier standing near the middle of the line. "You," he said, pointing at her. "Step forward." Her heart beat faster, but her face remained calm. She stepped out of line and walked toward him with steady steps. Every eye followed her. Some trainees felt nervous for her. Others were curious. A few thought she was about to be embarrassed. She stood in front of the commander, her posture straight, her eyes focused forward. She waited for instructions, just like she had been trained to do. The commander looked at her for a moment, then spoke in a tone that was loud enough for everyone to hear. "You think you can handle real combat?" he asked. She did not answer immediately. In training, sometimes silence was safer than speaking too much. The commander stepped closer. His presence felt heavy, like a shadow falling over her. Then he said something that made the entire field go quiet. "I'm a Navy SEAL." His voice was full of pride, as if the title itself was supposed to end the conversation. Some trainees nodded unconsciously, as if they agreed with his unspoken message. Others looked at the ground. The commander tilted his head slightly, studying her reaction. "Do you know what that means?" he continued. "It means I face things you probably can't even imagine." His words were not just information. They were a challenge. She listened carefully, her expression unchanged. Inside, she felt a familiar mix of pressure and focus. She had felt it many times before, during difficult training sessions, during moments when her body wanted to give up, but her mind refused to quit. The commander moved his hand suddenly, not violently but firmly, pushing her shoulder slightly. It was not enough to hurt her, but enough to test her balance and reaction. Some trainees gasped quietly. Others felt uncomfortable, but didn't dare to react. She took a small step back to regain balance. For a moment, it looked like she might stop there. The commander seemed satisfied, as if he had proven his point. But something in her eyes changed. It was not anger. It was not pride. It was clarity. She had trained for moments like this, not to fight out of emotion, but to respond with control. She remembered the countless hours of practice, the bruises, the exhaustion, the silent nights when she questioned herself but still refused to quit. The commander lifted his hand again, this time moving closer. His intention was not to seriously harm her, but to show dominance in front of everyone. He believed she would hesitate again. He believed wrong. In that instant, she did not think about the crowd, the commander's rank, or the consequences. She focused only on movement, balance, and timing. Her body reacted faster than her thoughts. She stepped aside smoothly, redirecting his arm with controlled grip. Her movement was not aggressive. It was precise, using his own momentum. She shifted her weight and applied a technique she had practiced hundreds of times. Everything happened in seconds. The commander lost his balance. Before anyone could fully understand what was happening, he was on the ground. The sound was not loud, but it felt like thunder across the silent field. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The trainees stared in disbelief. Some opened their mouths but could not speak. Others looked at the instructors, unsure whether they had really seen what just happened. She released her grip immediately and stepped back, exactly as she had been trained. Her breathing was steady. Her posture was calm. She did not look proud. She did not look afraid. She simply stood there. The commander lay on the ground for a brief moment, his expression unreadable. Slowly, he pushed himself up and stood again. Dust clung to his uniform, but he didn't brush it off immediately. The field was silent. No one dared to speak. The young female soldier remained in place, waiting for the next command, unaware that in just a few seconds, her life in this camp had changed forever. And no one knew yet that this was only the beginning of a story that would travel far beyond the training ground. The silence on the training field felt heavier than the cold air. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the wind seemed to slow down, as if it was waiting to see what would happen next. The commander stood still for a few seconds after getting up. Dust clung to his uniform, but he didn't wipe it away. His eyes were not angry. They were thoughtful, almost surprised. It was as if he had just seen something he did not expect to exist. The young female soldier stood a few steps away from him. Her hands were relaxed by her sides. Her face showed no pride, no fear, no excitement. She looked like someone who had simply followed training, nothing more. Around them, the trainees felt their hearts racing. Some felt nervous for her. Others felt confused. A few felt something else they had never felt before: respect. The instructors quickly stepped forward. One of them cleared his throat and spoke in a calm voice. "That's enough," he said. The commander slowly nodded. He looked at the young soldier again, this time more carefully, as if he was seeing her for the first time. "Return to your position," the instructor told her. She nodded slightly and walked back to line. Her steps were steady, but inside, her thoughts were racing. She knew she had not done anything wrong. She had followed what she was taught. Still, she wondered how this moment would change everything. As she stood back in her place, she could feel the eyes of others on her. Some trainees looked at her with curiosity. Some looked away quickly, as if they felt embarrassed for ever doubting her. A few smiled quietly, as if they felt proud of her, even though they had never spoken to her before. The training session resumed, but it felt different now. Commands sounded the same, drills were the same, but the mood had changed. Every movement felt heavier. Every second felt longer. The commander did not leave the field. He stood beside the instructors, watching the trainees with quieter expression. He spoke less than before. When he did speak, his voice was firm but not mocking anymore. The young soldier tried to focus on her training, but her mind kept returning to what had just happened. She remembered her first day at the camp, when she had felt small and unsure. She remembered how difficult the first weeks had been. Her body had ached, her hands had trembled, and her confidence had almost disappeared. There were nights when she had sat alone, staring at the ceiling of the dormitory, wondering if she had made a mistake by coming here. She had heard whispers from others who thought she wouldn't last long. Some had never said it directly, but their looks had said enough. Still, she had stayed, not because she wanted to prove others wrong, but because she wanted to prove something to herself. When the session finally ended, the trainees were dismissed. They walked slowly toward their quarters, their boots crunching against the gravel. Normally, they would joke, complain, or laugh after training. But today, they walked quietly. As she walked, two trainees came closer to her. They didn't say anything at first. They just walked beside her. That was unexpected. One of them finally said softly. She didn't know how to respond, so she just nodded. "You handled it well," the other one added. Most people would have frozen. She looked down for a moment, then said in a calm voice, "I just did what we were taught." They nodded and walked ahead. The conversation ended there, but something had changed between them. She could feel it. Later that evening, the camp was quieter than usual. The sky was dark, and the lights around the training grounds glowed softly. Some trainees sat outside, talking in low voices. Others rested in their rooms, tired from the long day. She sat on her bed, cleaning her boots slowly. Her hands moved automatically, but her mind was elsewhere. She replayed the moment again and again, not with pride, but with confusion. Had she gone too far? Had she embarrassed the commander? Would there be consequences? She didn't know. A knock sounded on the door. She looked up, surprised. When she opened it, she saw one of the instructors standing outside. "Come with me," he said quietly. Her heart skipped a beat. She nodded and followed him through the quiet hallway. They walked across the yard toward a small building where senior staff usually met. Inside, the lights were bright. The commander was there, standing near a table. He looked different now, less intimidating, more human. The instructor gestured for her to step forward, then left the room. For a moment, only the two of them stood there. She stood straight, waiting. The commander looked at her for a few seconds without speaking. His expression was serious, but not harsh. "Sit," he finally said. She sat on a chair opposite him, keeping her posture calm. "I want to be clear about something," he said slowly. "What happened today was not part of the plan." She nodded slightly. "I pushed you," he continued. "I tested you, and you responded with skill and control." She didn't know what to say, so she stayed silent. "Many people confuse rank with ability," he said. "I have seen that mistake many times. Today I made it too." His words surprised her. He paused for a moment, then added, "You did not act out of anger. You acted out of training. That matters." She felt a strange mix of emotions. She had expected criticism, maybe even punishment. Instead, she heard something close to acknowledgement. "I don't like being embarrassed," the commander said honestly, "but I respect discipline and control, and you showed both." She looked at him, unsure how to respond. "You will continue your training like everyone else," he said. "No special treatment. No special pressure. Understood?" "Yes," she replied quietly. He nodded once. "You can go." She stood up and walked toward the door. Just before she left, she heard his voice again. "Remember something," he said. "Real strength is not about shouting who you are. It is about staying calm when others lose control." She paused for a second, then nodded and left the room. Outside, the night air felt cool against her face. She walked slowly back to her quarters, her thoughts calmer than before. She realized that what had happened was not just about skill or rank. It was about something deeper. That night, she did not sleep easily. Her body was tired, but her mind was awake. She stared at the ceiling again, but this time, her thoughts were different. For the first time since she had arrived at the camp, she felt something she had not felt before. Not pride, not fear, but quiet confidence. She didn't know that the incident on the training field would soon spread beyond the camp. She didn't know that people would start talking about her in ways she had never imagined. She only knew one thing. From that day onward, she would no longer be invisible, and the real challenge had only just begun. The next morning, the training ground felt different. The sun rose slowly, casting long shadows over the dirt and gravel. The air smelled of wet earth and sweat from yesterday's drills. The sound of boots hitting the ground, the clanging of training equipment, and the shouts of instructors all mixed together. But something had changed. It was in the way people moved, the way they looked at each other, and the way they looked at her. She arrived early as usual. Her uniform was clean, her boots polished, and her posture perfect. Even before the other trainees arrived, she was already stretching and warming up, quietly preparing her body and mind. She knew the challenges ahead would be intense, and she wanted to be ready for anything. When the rest of the trainees started to gather, whispers began to spread. Some were curious, some nervous, some impressed. A few had already heard the story of what had happened the previous day. They didn't know all the details, but they knew it had been remarkable. Many of them tried not to look directly at her, unsure what to say, while others stared openly, their eyes a mix of admiration and surprise. The instructors blew the whistle, and the drills began. Push-ups, running, obstacle courses. Everything was routine, yet every movement felt heavier than before. Even the simplest commands carried more weight. Trainees moved faster, pushed harder, and focused more intently. The young soldier moved with steady precision, her body responding perfectly to each command. Her mind was clear, her breathing controlled. She didn't try to show off. She didn't need to. Her focus itself was enough to make people notice. Midway through the morning, the commander arrived again. He did not announce himself, just stepped onto the field quietly. The trainees immediately felt his presence, but this time there was no mockery in his eyes. His expression was serious, almost thoughtful. Some trainees held their breath, wondering if he was here to push them harder or to embarrass someone again. He walked slowly along the line, observing each trainee. When he reached her, he paused for a moment, his eyes studying her face carefully. She met his gaze without flinching, calm and composed. There was no fear, no pride, just readiness. "You handled yourself well yesterday," he said quietly, so only she could hear. She nodded slightly, not saying a word. "You are skilled," he continued. "But skill alone is not enough. You must prove endurance, patience, and control. You must prove that your actions are not a result of chance." "I understand," she replied calmly. He nodded and moved on, leaving her to continue the drills. For the first time, she noticed something different in his behavior. He no longer walked with the arrogance of someone who believed they were untouchable. He observed, measured, and analyzed. He was still authoritative, but the tone had shifted. He seemed genuinely curious about what she could do. The day's drills became increasingly intense. Obstacles were higher, tasks more complex, and the instructors pushed everyone harder than ever. The sun climbed higher, burning down on the soldiers' backs, making every movement a struggle. Yet she moved with steady precision. She did not rush, she did not hesitate, and she did not falter. During a particularly challenging obstacle course, a fellow trainee lost balance on a rope ladder. She was just a step ahead and reached out instinctively, helping him regain his footing without losing her own balance. The commander, who was watching from the side, leaned forward slightly. He noticed not only her strength and skill, but her awareness and quick thinking. After morning drills, the trainees gathered for a short break. Some were panting heavily, dripping with sweat. Some sat on the ground, exhausted. A few tried to joke to relieve tension, but the mood was serious. She sat quietly, taking slow, controlled breaths, sipping water and wiping her forehead. A few trainees gathered near her, curiosity getting the better of them. "How did you do that yesterday?" one asked quietly. "I mean, he's a commander, a Navy SEAL. No one reacts that fast." She looked at them without smiling. "I didn't do anything special. I just stayed calm and followed what I was taught. That's all." They nodded, but the words didn't fully explain it. Her calmness, her precision, and her focus went far beyond anything they had seen before. The commander returned after the break, this time standing in the middle of the field. He called all the trainees together. His voice was steady, serious. "Today will test more than your strength," he said. "It will test your mind, your patience, and your discipline. Everyone will be pushed beyond what they think they can handle. Only those who remain controlled will succeed." The drills that followed were brutal. They ran longer distances, climbed higher walls, carried heavier weights, and performed tasks under constant pressure. The young soldier moved with efficiency, never wasting energy, never showing frustration, never complaining. Her movements were fluid, almost effortless, yet every step carried strength. At one point, an instructor called out a complex scenario. Two trainees were to simulate a struggle, and the others had to respond in seconds. She was paired with a trainee who had always been bigger and stronger. The others assumed it would be easy for him to dominate. But as soon as the exercise began, she moved instinctively. She didn't attack recklessly. She used her knowledge of balance, leverage, and timing. Within seconds, she shifted his weight, controlled his movement, and completed the task perfectly. The field went silent again. Even the instructors paused. The commander's eyes narrowed slightly, but not in anger. There was a hint of admiration there, something he had not expected to see so quickly. After the exercise, the trainees were exhausted, but they could not stop talking quietly about what had happened. Many had assumed that strength was about size, power, or aggression. They had learned in just a few minutes that control, training, and quick thinking could surpass raw force. During the lunch break, she sat alone for a moment, eating quietly and observing her surroundings. She noticed other trainees watching her from a distance. Some looked inspired. Some looked cautious, unsure of how to approach. She didn't try to interact. She didn't need to. Her presence itself made a statement. Later in the afternoon, the commander called her forward again. This time, he wanted to see her in a controlled sparring exercise. The other trainees gathered around, whispering, eager to see what would happen. She stepped onto the mat, calm and focused. The commander moved closer. This exercise was different. It wasn't about physical strength alone. It was about anticipating moves, controlling responses, and maintaining composure under pressure. He made the first move, testing her reflexes. She responded with smooth precision, redirecting his force without resistance, keeping her balance perfectly. She moved faster than he expected, not with aggression, but with control and strategy. Seconds passed, but they felt longer to everyone watching. Each movement was measured, calculated, perfect. The commander tried to regain control, but she anticipated him. She countered his movements, not force against force, but by redirecting and using his own momentum. Finally, with a precise maneuver, she brought him to a controlled halt. He did not fall, but he stopped completely, stunned. The silence on the field was thick. Every trainee, every instructor, and even other staff members watching were amazed. The commander straightened slowly, his expression unreadable. He took a deep breath, then looked at her directly. For the first time, he did not speak loudly or assert authority. He simply nodded. She stepped back, hands relaxed, breathing steady. She had done exactly what was required. Nothing more, nothing less. She did not gloat. She did not smile. She simply maintained her calm presence. The field erupted in whispers, awe, and quiet respect. Trainees who had doubted her now understood that her skill was real. It was not a fluke. It was discipline, training, and control. For the commander, this was a moment of reflection. He realized that rank and experience did not guarantee dominance over skill and composure. He understood that humility and observation were just as important as confidence and authority. By the end of the day, everyone was exhausted, but the young soldier felt a quiet satisfaction. She knew she had proven something, not to anyone else, but to herself. She had faced challenges, maintained control, and executed her training perfectly. As she walked back to the quarters, trainees and instructors glanced at her with newfound respect. Some nodded quietly. Some offered small words of encouragement. She acknowledged them with a simple nod, her focus still on her own path. That night, as she lay in her bed, she reflected on the day. She remembered every movement, every challenge, every second of the sparring exercise. Her body was tired, but her mind was awake, analyzing, learning, and preparing for what would come next. She understood something deeply. The field was not just a place to test physical strength. It was a place to test character, patience, and resilience. The commander, the instructors, and even her fellow trainees had all witnessed her abilities, but she knew that true validation came from continued discipline and self-control, not from recognition. She closed her eyes and allowed herself a moment of calm. The journey was far from over. Challenges would continue. Pressure would return. But she felt ready for whatever came next. And somewhere in the shadows of the camp, the commander watched silently, reflecting on what he had seen. He knew that the soldier was exceptional, not because of size, speed, or rank, but because she had a rare combination of skill, focus, and control that could not be taught in books or lectures. The story of the day would soon be shared among the camp. It would inspire some humble others and remind everyone that true strength is measured not by force, but by mastery over oneself. The young soldier drifted into a restless sleep, unaware of how far this moment would reach, but confident in the knowledge that she had faced one of her greatest tests and passed it not with pride, but with precision, calm, and discipline. The next morning, the training camp felt almost alive. The sun had just started to rise, casting a warm, golden glow over the dirt and gravel. Birds chirped quietly, but their sound seemed distant compared to the pounding of boots on the ground as trainees began their morning exercises. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, one that made everyone move with more focus, more caution. Even the instructors seemed sharper, their eyes scanning every trainee with careful attention. She arrived early as usual, her uniform crisp, her boots polished, and her posture perfect. She took a deep breath, feeling the cool morning air fill her lungs, and stretched slowly. Each movement was precise and controlled, every muscle responding exactly as it should. For her, training was not just about physical strength. It was about balance, control, and readiness for anything. The other trainees began to arrive, their chatter and laughter filling the camp. But it was different now. Where some used to doubt her, others now looked at her with quiet respect. They whispered among themselves, stealing glances in her direction, but no one dared to challenge her. Even those who had been competitive before felt a subtle change. They realized she was different. She didn't have to prove herself with words. Her actions had already spoken. The commander arrived shortly after, moving across the field with his usual authority. But today, he walked differently. There was no arrogance in his steps, no loud proclamation of rank. He observed the trainees closely, his eyes lingering on her for just a moment longer than the others. He was curious, calculating, and thoughtful, a man who had seen countless soldiers, yet recognized something rare in her. The morning drills began, intense and demanding. The instructors called out commands with sharp voices, pushing everyone to their limits. Obstacle courses, running, carrying heavy loads, and performing complex maneuvers became the rhythm of the day. She moved efficiently through each task, her body flowing smoothly from one movement to the next. There was no rush, no hesitation, only precision. During one of the obstacle courses, the commander stepped closer to watch. He pointed out small mistakes to other trainees, correcting them firmly but without cruelty. When he reached her, he remained silent for a moment, watching closely. He saw the way she calculated every step, the way she adjusted her balance, the way she anticipated each challenge. She was not simply reacting. She was thinking, analyzing, and controlling everything she did. The commander finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. Your skill is evident, but skill without endurance, patience, and mental strength is incomplete. Today, you will face a different test, one that challenges more than your body. She nodded silently, understanding that this was more than a physical trial. It was a test of character, of focus, of the ability to remain composed when everything around her was chaos. The next exercise was designed to push that very limit. The trainees were paired for a controlled sparring drill. Each pair had to respond to surprise moves, maintain balance, and execute techniques under constant pressure. Most of the trainees were nervous, uncertain of how to handle the sudden challenges. But she was calm, her body ready, her mind sharp. When her turn came, she faced a trainee larger and stronger than herself. Everyone assumed he would dominate, that she would struggle. But as the exercise began, she moved with flawless precision. She didn't fight with force against force. Instead, she used leverage, timing, and anticipation. Every move she made was calculated, every reaction perfect. Within seconds, she had neutralized her partner's momentum, controlling the flow of the exercise effortlessly. The other trainees gasped. Some muttered quietly, unable to hide their amazement. The instructors exchanged surprised glances. Even the commander's eyes widened slightly, a subtle acknowledgement of her abilities. The exercise continued with other trainees, but it was clear that she had set a new standard. Others tried their best, pushed harder, but few could match her level of control. By the time the session ended, everyone was exhausted, sweating heavily, but the young soldier remained composed. She moved back to the side, drinking water calmly, her breathing steady, her focus unbroken. The commander called the trainees together for a short briefing. His voice carried across the field, serious and deliberate. "Today has shown me more than I expected. Some of you performed well. Others have room to grow. Remember this. Strength alone does not make a soldier. Discipline, awareness, patience, and control matter more than any raw power. You must learn to master yourself before mastering anything else." He paused, scanning the group before locking eyes with her. "And your actions demonstrate what true control looks like. Keep developing it. Never let pride or fear interfere with your judgment." She felt a quiet recognition in those words. She had not sought attention, nor had she expected praise. But knowing that her discipline had been noticed by someone of such experience brought a sense of quiet satisfaction. It was not pride, it was understanding that she was on the right path. The afternoon drills were even more grueling. The instructors introduced mental challenges alongside physical ones, requiring quick decisions under pressure, teamwork, and precise execution. She navigated each task with confidence, rarely making mistakes and always maintaining focus. During a teamwork drill, a fellow trainee made a critical error that could have caused the entire group to fail. Instantly, she adjusted her movements, compensated for his mistake, and guided the team toward success. The others barely noticed the subtle correction she made, but the instructor's eyes did. He scribbled notes, impressed by her awareness and calm under pressure. By the end of the day, the trainees were pushed beyond exhaustion. Many collapsed on the ground, panting, their muscles aching. Some had tears of frustration in their eyes. Yet she stood, her body tired but under complete control. She had pushed herself to the limit, but never allowed her emotions or fatigue to interfere with her performance. After the exercises, the commander approached her again. He did not speak loudly or issue commands. Instead, he stood silently for a moment, observing her with quiet thoughtfulness. Finally, he said, "You have proven yourself in ways that many fail to understand. Do not let arrogance enter your mind, but do not underestimate your abilities either. The path ahead will be harder, and you must remain ready for anything." She nodded, understanding the weight of his words. It was a lesson in humility and perseverance, a reminder that every day would bring new challenges, and each challenge required focus, skill, and control. That evening, as she returned to the dormitory, she noticed the way others looked at her. Some trainees nodded in respect. Some exchanged whispered conversations, clearly discussing her performance. She acknowledged them with a quiet nod, but did not let it affect her. She knew recognition was temporary. What mattered was consistency and personal growth. In her room, she unpacked her gear and cleaned her equipment meticulously. Every action was deliberate, from folding her uniform to polishing her boots. She reflected on the day, reviewing each exercise in her mind, considering what she had done well and what could be improved. Her body was exhausted, but her mind was alive, analyzing every detail. Later, she lay on her bunk, staring at the ceiling. She remembered the commander's words, the glances of the other trainees, and the challenges she had faced. She realized that her journey was no longer just about proving herself. It was about sustaining her discipline, strengthening her mind, and mastering her abilities. She knew that the story of her actions would soon travel through the camp. People would talk about her skill, her composure, and the incident with the commander. But she also knew that true respect was earned over time, not from a single moment. She had to remain focused, keep training, and face every challenge with the same calm and precision she had shown today. As the lights went out, she closed her eyes, her mind replaying the day's events one last time. She thought about the commander, the instructors, and the other trainees. She understood that every interaction, every drill, and every moment of control was shaping her into a stronger, wiser soldier. Somewhere in the shadows of the camp, the commander reflected quietly as well. He had seen many soldiers, many trainees, but she had shown something rare, discipline under pressure, awareness under chaos, and control where most would falter. He knew that her potential was extraordinary, and that if she continued to train with focus and humility, she would achieve something few ever could. The night was still, but her mind was awake. She was not finished learning. She was not finished growing. Every challenge had only reinforced one truth. Strength was not just physical, and mastery was not just skill. It was patience, control, and the quiet confidence to act when it mattered most. And so, she drifted into a light sleep, ready for whatever the next day would bring, understanding that the journey ahead was just beginning, and that she had the ability to face it, fully prepared, fully aware, and fully capable. The morning was calm, but there was an electricity in the air that everyone could feel. The sun was just beginning to rise over training camp, casting long shadows across the dirt and gravel. Birds chirped quietly in the distance, but their sound seemed small compared to the pounding of boots as the trainees moved across the field. Today felt different, heavier, more important. Everyone sensed it, even if they couldn't explain why. She arrived early as always, carrying herself with quiet confidence. Her uniform was clean, her boots polished, her posture perfect. She took a deep breath and began her warm-up exercises, stretching carefully, focusing on every movement. She had trained for this moment, not knowing exactly what would happen, but knowing that it would be a day where her control, focus, and skill would be tested again. The other trainees began to arrive, filling the camp with their chatter and laughter, though it was subdued. Everyone had heard the whispers about her, about what she had done with the commander, about how she had handled herself in ways that few could. Some trainees looked at her with respect, some with curiosity, and a few with quiet envy. Yet none of it mattered to her. She was focused on the work, not on attention. The commander arrived shortly after the trainees had gathered. This time, he didn't make a show of his presence. He walked quietly, observing every trainee with a keen eye, but his gaze lingered on her longer than the others. There was no arrogance in his steps, no loud proclamations of rank. Instead, he carried an air of thoughtful evaluation. He had seen many soldiers over the years, but he recognized something rare in her: calm, control, intelligence, and discipline combined in one person. The morning drills began. They were intense, more challenging than the previous days. Obstacle courses, heavy lifting, running, and complex exercises tested every muscle, every nerve. Trainees pushed themselves harder than they ever had before. The sun climbed higher in the sky, beating down on their backs, making each movement more exhausting. Yet she moved with steady precision, her mind focused, her body in perfect control. She didn't rush. She didn't hesitate. She didn't falter. During a particularly difficult obstacle course, the commander approached her. His eyes were sharp but not judging. He wanted to see her mental strength under extreme physical pressure. "Keep moving," he said quietly. "Focus, control, awareness. Don't let fatigue decide your actions." She nodded slightly, absorbing his words without speaking. Every step she took was measured, every movement intentional. The other trainees struggled, some falling behind, some complaining quietly, but she remained steady. Her breathing was controlled, her movement efficient, her focus unbroken. Later, the commander called for a team exercise. The trainees were divided into groups and tasked with completing a simulated mission under strict time constraints. The exercise required quick thinking, precision, communication, and teamwork. Most trainees panicked, arguing or hesitating under pressure. But she remained calm, quietly observing, calculating, and guiding her team with subtle directions. At one point, a teammate made a critical mistake, threatening the success of the mission. Without hesitation, she adjusted the plan in seconds, redistributing tasks, correcting errors, and keeping everyone on track. The commander watched from the sidelines, noting her leadership, her awareness, and her ability to act decisively without panic. It was not raw force that impressed him. It was control, intelligence, and composure under pressure. By the end of the morning, her team completed the mission successfully. Other trainees looked at her in awe, some whispering to each other, others staring openly. She didn't celebrate. She didn't boast. She simply returned to her place, drinking water calmly, breathing steadily, and preparing for the next challenge. After a short break, the commander approached her directly. "Step forward," he said. The other trainees gathered around, curious. They had seen her skill and composure before, but the commander's tone now carried something new, an unspoken acknowledgement. She walked toward him, her movements confident but calm. He studied her silently for a moment. "What you have shown over the past few days is rare," he said. "Skill, control, discipline, focus. These are qualities that many spend their entire lives trying to develop. You have demonstrated them naturally, through your actions, not your words." She listened quietly, not interrupting. She knew that this was not about praise. It was about understanding and acknowledgement from someone who had seen everything. "You have earned respect here," he continued, "not because of who you are, but because of what you have done. Remember this. True strength is not shown by force or arrogance. It is shown through composure, patience, and precise action. Never forget it." She nodded, her mind absorbing every word. It was a lesson she had already learned through experience, but hearing it from someone with such authority reinforced its importance. The rest of the day continued with more challenges, each designed to test endurance, skill, and mental strength. She moved through each one with ease, maintaining focus and control even as others around her struggled. The other trainees were exhausted, their energy spent, yet she remained steady, her performance consistent and flawless. By the afternoon, the commander gathered everyone for a final assessment. He addressed the group, his voice carrying across the field. "You have all worked hard. Some have shown skill, some have shown determination, and some have shown both. But one among you has shown something extraordinary: discipline under pressure, intelligence under chaos, and composure when others faltered." He paused, letting the words sink in. The trainees glanced around, curious. He looked directly at her. "You have set a new standard here. Not because of strength alone, but because of control, awareness, and precision. Let this be a lesson to all of you. Respect is earned through actions, not words. Master yourself, and you will master any challenge." The trainees erupted in quiet murmurs of admiration. Some nodded in respect. Others whispered each other, sharing stories of what they had witnessed over the past days. She stood quietly, acknowledging them with a simple nod, not allowing herself to be distracted by attention or praise. As the camp quieted down that evening, she reflected on the journey she had taken over the past few days. She thought about the long nights of training, the early mornings, the physical pain, the mental exhaustion, and the doubts she had faced. She remembered the moments when others had questioned her ability, the times she felt small and unsure, and the countless hours she had spent proving to herself that she belonged. She realized that recognition was fleeting, but mastery was permanent. What mattered was the discipline, the preparation, and the focus that had brought her here. She had not sought attention or approval, but she had earned it through her actions, her consistency, and her calm under pressure. That night, as she lay on her bunk, she thought about the commander's words. She understood now that the journey was far from over. Training would continue, challenges would grow more difficult, and pressure would return in unexpected ways. But she was ready. She had learned to trust her training, trust her instincts, and trust hers. LF. She also understood something deeper. That true strength was not about showing others how strong you were. It was about control, awareness, and the ability to act decisively when it mattered most. It was about humility, patience, and quiet confidence. These were lessons that would stay with her for life, far beyond the training camp. The next morning, she woke with a sense of calm determination. She knew the other trainees would continue to watch her, some with admiration, others with curiosity or envy. But she did not need to prove herself to anyone. Her focus was on the work, the training, and the path ahead. Every drill, every exercise, every challenge was an opportunity to improve, to master herself further, and to prepare for whatever life might demand. The commander continued to observe her in the days that followed. He no longer tested her directly, but he watched carefully, taking note of her consistency, her focus, and her discipline. He realized that she had something few soldiers ever achieved: the ability to remain calm, composed, and effective under extreme pressure. It was rare, valuable, and remarkable. Weeks later, the story of her actions spread quietly throughout the camp. Trainees and instructors shared the tale, not as a story of confrontation, but as an example of skill, composure, and discipline. She became a silent inspiration to others, a standard to aim for, without ever needing to boast or claim recognition. Even the commander began to change in subtle ways. He observed more, spoke less, and treated trainees with greater respect. He had seen firsthand that force and authority alone were not enough. What mattered was skill, focus, and control. Her actions had taught him a lesson he would not forget. For her, life continued with the same quiet focus. Training was still grueling, days were long, and challenges never ended. But she had learned that strength was more than physical, and success was more than recognition. It was about preparation, control, and consistency. In the months that followed, she grew stronger, more confident, and more capable. She continued to face challenges with calm determination, never allowing pride or fear to interfere. Every movement, every decision, every action reflected the lesson she had learned, not just about skill, but about character. And in the quiet moments, when the camp was still and the sun was low, she would remember the moment that had changed everything. The moment on the training field when she faced authority with calm, precision, and control. It was a memory that reminded her of her own strength, of what was possible through discipline and focus, and of the quiet power of self-mastery. By the time she completed her training, she was no longer just another trainee. She was respected, admired, and recognized, not for boasting, not for shouting, but for her actions, her control, and her ability to remain calm when the world expected her to falter. She had earned her place, and she had done it with dignity, precision, and quiet determination. Her story became more than just a tale within the camp. It became a reminder that true strength is measured not by force, rank, or words, but by discipline, control, and the ability to face challenges with calm and precision. She had proven that anyone, regardless of expectations or doubts, could rise above and earn respect through action, focus, and unwavering self-mastery. And in that moment, she understood the truth that would guide her for the rest of her life. Real power is not shouted. It is demonstrated. It is earned. And it is never wasted when used with discipline, patience, and control.